Jean-Pierre gets hit with a litany of questions during a White House press briefing. Washington, D.C. mayor requests the National Guard to help curb illegal immigration. You have a TikToker talking about pushing some queer trans stuff upon preschoolers. And there's a conspiracy theory about a deepfake for President Joe Biden. All that and more here on The Bald Brad Show. Welcome to The Bald Brad Show. It is Friday, July 29th. We have made it to the end of the week. Another one in the bag. And as always, I couldn't be more than happy than to share these fine mornings with all of you, my friends and true American patriots, where we can come together as a community, go over the stories of the day, and bring you all the news and information you need to know about. So if you want to join us here at The Bald Brad Show, and we hope that you do, because we're about to hit 10,000 subscribers, folks. It's a big deal here, another milestone. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. If you're over at Rumble, hit the plus and give us a comment down below. And if you're listening on any of the podcast airwaves, Apple, Google, Spotify, etc., take a moment right now to leave us a lovely 5-star review. Not only would you be helping a conservative, but most importantly, you'd be supporting getting conservative thought and ideas out there to new viewers who haven't seen our content or our channel. So your help and support would be greatly appreciated. With that being said, all sorts of news today, from Jean-Pierre getting pressed on inflation, the recession, illegal immigration, COVID-19, China by the White House press corps. We also have illegal immigration impacting Washington, D.C. finally, after Greg Abbott has been spending months sending illegal immigrants by the busloads to Democrat-ran areas. We also have TikTokers now trying to still push this trans, queer, LGBTQ plus agenda upon preschoolers. For the most part, we've been talking about basically from first, second grade, like you see in New Jersey, all the way up on this whole agenda that they're trying to push within our public school system. And then lastly, we have a really interesting one. There's a conspiracy theory out there that just started basically like a couple days ago, where a lot of people think that Joe Biden wasn't really given a speech, that it was somebody else doing a deep fake and it was all CGI. So we're going to talk about that. And I think the outcome is going to be really surprising for all of you. So hang tight for the last story of the day. It is a doozy. But let's jump into our lead story of the day regarding the White House press corps actually doing their job and asking really good questions. We have one lady who's a reporter that will ask about inflation, the recession, and basically if we can even trust Joe Biden on his handling of the economy. He says one thing and something else happens. So she does a great job, and we're going to cover that. And then right after, we have Peter Doocy basically asking, hey, what's going on with COVID-19? President just had a conversation with Xi. Like, did he actually ask about COVID? Did he ask what's going on? So a lot of good stuff coming out from the White House press corps. Without further ado, let's go ahead and roll into the tape and watch it.
Okay, thank you, Kareem. Today, the president argued that the economy is not in a recession. And it was a year ago that the president said that inflation would be temporary. So the question is, why should Americans take his word for it now when the president got it wrong on the economy a year ago?
Great question.
Here's, when we talk about recession and we talk about where we are currently today, what we look at and what we speak to is the facts, is what other experts are.
What we speak to is the facts. Just come on. Does anybody here at the Bald Brad Show, the viewership, the true American patriots, does anybody really believe that? I'm not saying from time and again, does she throw facts out there? Sure, she does. But this idea that she's going to be dealing with the facts on the recession, when we all know for 2 consecutive quarters, we've had a decline in GDP growth, and this is stuff they're going to push, that we're not in a recession. They're redefining things. There was an outcome on Wikipedia, and I don't know if any of you caught this in the news because it's been kind of buried. Wikipedia itself, over like the last few hours, has made like a ton of attempts to change and redefine what a recession is. So the left are actively right now, not just from the White House, but the Democrat Party and progressive left are trying to do all avenues they can on redefining what a recession is all of a sudden. That's how bad things have gotten with this administration. But they're going to throw the facts. That's all they deal with, folks, is all the facts. Her rambling and fumbling through her words, does it sound like she's dealing with the facts? Sounds like she's trying to make a lot of things up and pretend like they're facts, when in actuality, they're just a bunch of nonsense.
We're saying, and what the textbook definition is of recession. And if you look at the pre-recession years in our history, you see that the thing that happens during a pre-recession is that you lose jobs, and we're not seeing that currently. It is not what is happening. The labor market, it has gained jobs.
You notice she's using history, right? I'm all for it. I'm all for trying to use presidents to kind of see what happened beforehand and kind of see what's going on today. But the problem is when you're looking at data, you have to see if those trends are consistent. There's a massive problem with the trends and patterns that we've seen historically to present day. You're looking at a massive pandemic. The government shut the entire economy down. They shut private businesses down. So obviously, you're going to see a lot of comeback in terms of jobs, people creating new jobs, people starting new companies. All these things are happening because things are finally starting to kind of spin their wheels and get going here. You still have certain regulation, red tape, keeping everything down. So you're going to have an increase in jobs, but you can still have an increase in jobs and negative GDP growth, which would still categorize as you having some sort of rescinding of the economy of GDP. Thus, you'd be in a recession. But she's going to push this whole thing of like, well, jobs are being created. People are going back to work. Like, this is not a pre-recession kind of idea. You know, like, come on, man, come on. She's struggling.
Look at the first 6 months, 2.7 million jobs have been created under the president's watch. 9 million new jobs have been created. The last quarter, 1.2 million jobs. And we're seeing the resiliency of business investment. We're seeing the resiliency of consumer buying power, and that matters. Those are the broad factors that we look at.
But Corinne, what did you say to
Folks, she just said the consumer buying power. You have less power today than you did previously because you're at 9.1% inflation. You have less purchasing power, but she's going to push that, kind of just slide that in there like nobody's going to question her on the idea of that. I mean, it's amazing that literally they're citing this whole idea of like, oh, well, consumers are spending more on goods and services. Well, yeah, they're spending more on goods and services because they're spending more literally on goods and services. They might be buying more, but they're spending more for it. I mean, the manipulation of data from this administration is quite astonishing, and I'm not sure I've seen another administration do it like this in quite some time. Going from Jen Psaki to Karine Jean-Pierre, it is literally something to be seen.
Americans who say this is really a discussion about semantics, whatever you want to call it? You have Americans all across the country who say it is harder for them to make ends meet every month. They're hurting.
And this is a president who understands that. We have talked about that. We have talked about how we understand what the American people are feeling. We understand what that conversation they are having around the kitchen table about how they're going to deal with costs. But that is why we're asking Congress to act on this Inflationary Reduction Act. And let's not forget, I just talked about chips and how that is going to make difference and lower costs. When you think about the semiconductors, right? You think about how the prices of automobiles shot up during the pandemic, and now we're going to be able to make that here. That is a big deal. That is incredibly important as well.
Folks, it is astonishing that she's saying, oh, well, we know what they're going through. While at the same time, you have all these poll numbers coming out, and they just said this like a couple weeks ago, that they don't care what the poll numbers show. So you have the American public reflecting in polls and surveys and observational studies of, hey, this is how we feel. And in some cases, this is what we would like seeing changed. And she comes out and says, oh, well, we're not worried about what the polls say. In a nutshell, what that tells people is we're just going to do what we want to do, regardless of what the American people want to do. We see this from time and time again. You see this with illegal immigration. The number one topic for Americans, supposedly, they're not willing to handle it. You have this climate crisis that Americans just quite frankly don't really care about, and they're still going to push it. And most importantly, the January 6th whole debacle, Americans don't care about it. It shows it in poll numbers. Nobody cares, and they're still going to push it. So again, it's all up to them. It's not up to us Americans what we want. It's up to the Biden administration to do what they think is best for all of us, even though we're telling them plainly what we like and don't like. They don't care, but they care. They understand. They understand and supposedly care about your kitchen table issues. They care that you're paying all this money at the pump, while at the same time cashing out checks like hotcakes during COVID. Come on.
Risk of looking out of touch in this moment by digging in on this definition that this moment is not a recession, if in fact at some point it's determined that that's exactly what
I have to tell you, Kristen, I don't think we're digging in. We're being asked. We're being told, and every day I've come in here, I've been asked, so Karine, what, is this a recession? So we're answering the question. We're using the facts to answer the question. We're using economists who have said,
please.
For example, Chair Powell has said, I do not think the U.S. is currently in a recession. There's just too many areas in the economy that are performing well, and that matters as well as we are trying to explain to the American people.
And just very quickly, has the president...
I love that she goes, we're not digging in. You guys are asking us about it. You are literally digging in by redefining what a recession is to try and not go after a narrative that you're destroying everything from illegal immigration to our domestic policies, to our economy, to our foreign policies. Like, there is nothing they've done right. There's literally nothing. I'm sure somebody can comment and find some little tiny little minuscule thing that they've done. For the most part, as far as all the big things, not a single thing, but they're not digging in, folks. They're bringing you the facts. They're bringing us the facts. Oh my God.
Spoken to Senator Sinema, is it his expectation that she is going to support this piece of legislation?
So I refer you to Senator Sinema. The negotiations, we do not have a call to read out to you at this time. I would refer you to her and also Senator Schumer, who's doing the negotiations.
Not to have her as a part of these negotiations?
Again, I would refer you to Senator Schumer, who's been leading.
Peter Doocy is coming up, folks.
Thanks, Karine. On the phone today, did President Biden ask President Xi anything about getting to the bottom of the origins of COVID?
Thank God somebody has the cojones to ask this question. It was just the other day, for those frequent viewers of the Bald Brad Show, did we not talk about that? Of where is Biden at on this, of asking, where's the UN on this? Where's anybody that talks about all these humanitarian crises around the world, around the globe? We just had the biggest one in at least recent history, and nobody's going to question China on it, start doing some crazy investigations on a global scale to see what the hell is going on with this, with the Wuhan lab leak or the seafood market, whatever it may be. Where is everybody on this? We're going on 2+ years later, and nobody's done a damn thing. I guarantee you the answer here is going to be, oh, well, yeah, he had a little bit of a conversation about something. It might have just slipped up here and there, but no real substance because he's weak on China. I guarantee it can't be harsh. It can't be harsh because we all think it's a conspiracy, but we all think that China has some sort of, some sort of dirt on Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, so he's going to go soft on it. Nothing's going to happen when Biden's in office on all this stuff. But let's continue.
On the origins of COVID, the two presidents did discuss the health security, and transparency is key part of that. As we have repeatedly said, the PRC is not living up to scientific and public health norms for data and information sharing. We have said this before, so that is nothing new. And we are the international community. We've said this needs more data. They need more information to make clear the determination on the origins of the pandemic. We continue to work with our partners around the world to press China to fully share information and to cooperate with the World Health Organization. So this has come up many times before.
Does anybody feel the pressure? It's been, what are we in, July? What, you're talking a year and a half since Biden's been in office? I haven't really heard anything, and I'm in the freaking news every day, right? We do a show here Monday through Friday. How many times have you guys heard me talk about this whole idea of China being pressed? Where are all the answers? What's going on? Honestly, not that much because it's not in the news, right? You almost have to force yourself, and be careful doing it because you don't get removed off YouTube, but you almost have to force yourself to just bring it up and try to find some sort of news on it because nobody's talking about it. But supposedly the globe, supposedly all our allies and everybody's going out and pressuring China on this. Come on. But the facts, folks, that's what they're bringing us. It's all substantive.
Before, but it came up today.
I'm just saying that the two presidents did discuss health security. That did come up.
Okay. Did the president ask Xi about the findings of that congressional investigation that the Chinese were trying to do?
Hold on. I apologize, and we'll go back just a little bit with this. She never answered the question. And I get Peter Doocy has to move on because he keeps pressing her on it. It's like the third time. But she just talked about health. But she was never specific of, did that issue, that exact topic get brought up? And I'm not so sure it did. And that didn't seem very believable in her answer.
She about the findings of that congressional investigation that the Chinese were trying to infiltrate the Federal Reserve over the last couple of years.
We don't have anything to share on that.
Okay.
Beyond the readout that you all got.
On a different
So not much. Lovely. But pressuring China on all aspects.
topic, the D.C. mayor sent the White House a letter asking for National Guard help with migrants that have been bused here from Texas and Arizona. Is the president going to approve that request for the National Guard?
So, as to your question on the National Guard, I refer you to the Department of Defense. They will have that answer for you. We have been in regular touch with Mayor Bowser and her team. And I said this before. I said this last week about Republicans using migrants as a political tool, and that is shameful, and that is just wrong. There is a process in place for managing migrants at the border. This is not it, what they're doing currently.
What a spin.
That includes expelling migrants as required by court order under Title 42, transferring them to ICE custody, or placing them in the care of local NGOs as they await further processing. Again, so what Republicans are doing, the way that they're meddling in the process and using migrants as a political pawn is just wrong.
So the White House's preference would be for small towns in Texas and Arizona to have to take care of these migrants rather than a large metropolitan
That is
city
not what
like
I said.
Washington, D.C.
That is not what I said.
That is what
That-
you
no,
said.
that
You
is
said
not-
you think that
I
people
said
are
that
using
there is-
migrants.
Yeah, they are. They're sending migrants to big cities on purpose,
So
using them as a political ploy.
So if they don't go to big cities,
It is astonishing, and I'm going to call out the hypocrisy of this administration, and we're going to come back to this, I promise. They are literally flying illegal immigrants in the dead of the night to different portions of the United States. They've been doing this for a while. They were paying for hotel fees for these illegal immigrants while our veterans are sleeping on the streets, but just Republicans are using them as political pawns. I don't disregard what she's saying. Actually, I agree with that. We are using them as political pawns. And we were all excited about it because, look, if you want to create this problem for the small localities in the states at the southern border, like Peter Ducey's mentioning, then you know what? You could deal with them in Democrat-ran states. And now it's a problem. And we have our story coming up next about that problem. So all of a sudden, when it's starting to affect them and they're complaining, it's back to Republicans' fault. We're using them as political pawns. Then what were you doing? What are you doing now with the illegal immigrants on this whole aspect of removing certain Trump's policies, allowing basically an open border, not being clear on your messaging? Joe Biden still has yet to go to the border. It's probably one of the biggest crises other than the economy right now that we have going for us outside of the foreign policy idea. So this whole hypocrisy of we're using them as pawns and we're the only ones and it's despicable and wrong, but you're doing the exact same thing from the Democrat side of the aisle, but you're not going to call them out on it. Facts, folks. She's bringing us the facts once again.
where should they
There's
go?
a process. I just laid it out.
There's a process, and they come to a big city, and now
That
the
is-
mayor says she needs the National Guard.
That's
So
because Republicans are using migrants who are coming here for who knows, because they're dealing with humanitarian issues back in their country. They're coming here for a better life, and they are being used. Peter, they're being used by Republican governors. That is what's
does any
happening.
of this just make the president want to say this is causing a lot of burdens on small cities, big cities? Maybe I should just close the border.
What I'm saying is what Republicans are doing is wrong, and there is a process in place, and we should follow the process. There's a legal process in place, and they should follow it. Okay, thank you.
Notice that she didn't mention and answer the question about closing the border. And that doesn't mean stopping legal immigration, but building the border wall, putting Trump's policies back in place, being harsh on the border, increasing more border security. None of that's an issue. So they call this a whole challenge. They're not going to call it a crisis, and they have no reason to solve it. I mean, it is so mind-blowing that they're pushing this whole agenda on all of us, and they don't want to fix it. They don't want to do anything at all to fix the issue. So there you have it. You have Karine Jean-Pierre being pressed on China, inflation, illegal immigration, but they're going to bring us the facts, folks, while they redefine everything, manipulate everything, and spin everything to fit the narrative that they want. Furthermore, our next story is in conjunction with what Peter Ducey was talking about in terms of the DC mayor, Bowser, asking for National Guard help with migrant buses from southern border. So the plan worked. Now you have them complaining because they're not just going to DC, but they're also going to New York. And now they're calling it a humanitarian crisis. Just wrap your heads around this, folks. Humanitarian crisis in DC, but not a humanitarian crisis at the border. 200,000 plus illegal immigrants at the border every single month, and they're not getting anywhere near those numbers in New York City or DC, but that's a crisis. But what's happening at the border isn't. Look how that works. It says Washington, D.C. Mayor Bowser is asking the National Guard to mobilize in an effort to deal with the migrants that are being bused to the city from southern states. So this is kind of the effect that we wanted, in a nutshell, was to pressure these Democrat cities to basically take care of them. Look, you want to have open borders. You're the ones that want all this to happen. You want millions of people to pour across the border. And we don't even have that in a sense of what I'm talking about, of open borders, like tens of millions of people pouring across every single month, because everybody wants to come here. They can't even handle a few hundred illegal immigrants, maybe a few thousand, depending on how many Greg Abbott's busting there. And I hope he keeps just busting everybody. So now it's overloading their system in New York and DC, and they're complaining about it. And if you remember the other day, we talked about how Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, was blaming Republicans for all of this. Like on the border. And because it wasn't just blaming Republicans, but also blaming the border states themselves for this crisis, for this problem. Not blaming the Democrats, not blaming Joe Biden, not blaming for the policies in place, not blaming him for the mishandling of what's taking place at the U.S.-Mexico border. No. They're blaming Republicans and the southern states, the border states, for this. The mayor, who has championed accepting migrants entering the country illegally as a humanitarian rights issue, requested the D.C. National Guard to be activated indefinitely to assist with what she called a humanitarian crisis. Bowser's asking the D.C. Armory be used as a processing center and D.C. National Guard resources be used to help field migrants as they arrive by bus. Migrants by the busloads have been sent to the Capitol by GOP governors Greg Abbott of Texas and Doug Ducey of Arizona as a political statement over Biden's handling of the immigration crisis at the southern border. Bowser has vocally complained about the migrant surge in her city. Good. I couldn't be more than happy that you're dealing with this problem now, because they've been dealing with it for freaking months, ever since Joe Biden's been in office. You have hundreds of them a year dying on ranchers' properties and not wanting to help them out with it. You have them attacking our Border Patrol agents, sometimes killing them. You have illegal immigrants killing U.S. citizens, and some of these illegal immigrants have been deported multiple times. You have some of them being apprehended and let go. This doesn't include the gotaways. You're talking millions of gotaways that aren't being ultimately contained or apprehended by Border Patrol agents. So good. You deal with the problem because your party wants it. Our party doesn't. So Bowser again vocally complained about the migrant surge, suggesting those entering the city are being tricked into coming to DC, but stressed it is a federal issue that demands a federal response. Oh, so they're being tricked. No, they're not being tricked. They know where they're going because they have to volunteer to get on the bus to go there. So they know exactly what's going on. We don't see anybody from Mayor Bowser's office here. This comes from the Migrant Solidarity Mutual Aid Network volunteer told the DCist. We don't see anybody from the Office of Latino Affairs here to say, welcome. How can we support you? Even if it's with like waters, he continued. People just want to wash their hands because this is seen as a hot potato. But what it should be seen as is an opportunity for us to actually create a model of welcoming. So it's almost reminiscent of the Black Lives Matter movement, where they say that they want to help Black communities and Black lives and they care about those lives, but then you never see them do anything other than protesting and wasting charitable money that's going to them. It's never going to helping with the issues in the inner city. It's just only going to helping the leaders of that actual platform buy $1 million mansions and just possibly, I'm using possibly because I don't have proof of this, allegedly embezzling money because $60+ million allegedly just went missing. Go figure. Well, the sustained spike in illegal immigration compounds the ongoing homeless problem in the nation's capital, which is also being reflected in New York City, where, again, you had Eric Adams say, well, everybody's going to have to do their part. Meaning he literally wants New Yorkers to house some of these illegal immigrants. He wants the churches to rise up and help house them and pay for their housing. They're going to end up paying hotel fees in New York City for these illegal immigrants because things have gotten so bad. Furthermore, they're just going to allow them to sleep on the streets regardless of city ordinances, regardless of the law, which is reminiscent from another Democrat state that I live in called California, where we have a quarter of the nation's homeless population in one county called Los Angeles County, where it just so happens that you have a lot of celebrities live, but they don't care, but supposedly they do. Host Margaret Brennan brought up a Washington Post report that suggests homeless shelters are now being filled with illegal immigrants. Oh, great. So being filled with illegal immigrants, messing with our infrastructure, but yet again, our veterans can't get to the VA. They can't even get freaking their doctor's appointments. They can't even get registered. None of those things. And now our own homeless people and sometimes veterans can't even get into the shelters because you have people that aren't even citizens of this country taking them up. So supposedly the illegal immigrants being bussed in from Texas and Arizona are impacting that. Good. Maybe now this will figure out the whole system that Democrats want and have them be a wake-up call that, hey, you know what, this is clearly a problem, because now it's impacting their homeless issue. Now it's impacting their shelters. Now it's impacting their infrastructure, where it's been impacting all of that, Arizona, Texas, etc., for the last, 18 plus months. So good. Short term, I don't care. Long term, it's not a good thing. Bowser admitted that it's a significant issue and called on the federal government to get more involved, as she fears illegal immigrants are being tricked into traveling to her city. So no actual proof, just this is what she thinks, of course, but I'm glad. I'm glad now they're being impacted by this, and we'll see how long they can do it. So continue to stress the system over there in DC and New York. Start maybe doubling up the buses now and get more illegal immigrants into their areas. They could pay for it. The localities can pay for it and the state can pay for it. And now you get to see what it feels like on a small scale, a minuscule scale, on what Texas and Arizona is dealing with on a freaking monthly basis. Good. Things are so bad in the localities where literally, if you recall during COVID, where the Biden administration was in a nutshell busing these illegal immigrants into certain localities and dropping them off there. So they were doing this as well, that those localities were required to pay for the COVID tests of the illegal immigrants. And some of the localities had to file for a state of emergency because they didn't have the funds to pay for it. Like, they were coming in literally by the busload. So it's so funny how it's Republicans using them as political pawns to bust them different areas. But when the Democrats do it, whether it's through plane or bus, or driving them in unmarked vehicles, which we've seen as well, all of a sudden it's just, it's not a problem. That's okay for them to do it, but it's not okay for us to do it. So there's a hypocrisy coming from the Biden White House, typical. Speaking of other crazy news, which is a continuation of this whole LGBTQ plus social justice push in our public school system, we have a TikTok video here that exposes the hotbed issue of this gender identity theory being pushed upon our kids. We have a trans educator. Sorry, be specific here, because we don't want to mispronoun or misgender or whatever it may be. A queer trans educator posted a video on TikTok to justify why preschoolers need to learn about sexuality. If you are prepared for 2 minutes and 8 seconds of blood boiling content, you're going to watch this video with me. I haven't seen the whole thing. I've seen a portion of it. It was like, we got to do a show on it, folks. We got to do a show on it. And as you can imagine, it's coming from libs of TikTok. So without further ado, folks, let's go ahead and let's sit through this video together, and we'll comment on it as we go.
Hi, I'm Lindsay. I'm a queer and trans educator and children's performer, creator, writer. You might know me from my web series Queer Kid Stuff, where I talk about gender and sexuality stuff for all ages with a preschool audience in mind. And I write for preschool television, do a lot of stuff in early childhood ed. The short answer to this question is that we need to talk to preschoolers about sexuality and gender because any later is too late. The long answer to this is that this is the age when children...
It's too late. We've already missed our opportunity to try to mess with their heads and make them think that they're a female even though they're a biological male. That's crazy. Like I said, we've called these people groomers. We're not saying they want to sexually touch them or anything like that, but they're grooming them with these certain identities, gender identities, these theories, all these things starting at preschool now. We talked about how in New Jersey, they are literally showing second graders cartoon videos and teaching them how to masturbate and play with themselves. I mean, this is where our education system has gone. I'm a teacher, by the way. I'm a teacher, and this is what's going on. And I'm baffled. And I'm sitting here going, what the hell? I would never feel comfortable talking about sexuality to my students. That's not my job. Granted, I'm a math teacher, but either way, man, sorry, that's for your parents. You go ask your parents that. I don't even want to have those conversations in my classroom. Don't have them in my classroom. You can have them with your families and ask them what you should do and get the help you need with them, not with me.
Start to self-identify. They start to understand themselves and in relation to the world around them. They need to understand.
That's way different. Having your brain development try to understand the world around you. That's vastly different than actually understanding who you are and your identity. Like, we all know there's certain gender norms that are out there in terms of behavior. Okay, like for example, men will tend to mow the lawn or do certain yard work or roofing and things like that. Men tend to choose that type of field, where women tend to choose something different. So this whole idea of them figuring themselves out is a bunch of hocus pocus. For those that have teenager children, they're still trying to figure themselves out. I teach mostly seniors. There's a few juniors here and there. I see it in real time. They're trying to figure themselves out. Not talking in terms of gender. They're just trying to figure out who they are as a person. What is their purpose in the world? Not going, am I a male or am I a female? They can look at their appendages and be able to make that judgment call, because it turns out sexual gender, your biological gender, whatever you want to call it, sex, gender, same thing practically. You can, in a nutshell, be able to objectively identify what you are, but not according to them. None of this is objective. It's just all what you think.
And different gender diversity, because the Academy of Pediatrics actually says that most children have a solid understanding of their gender identity by the age of 4, and that is inclusive of cis as well as trans and non-binary kids. Preschoolers need to understand sexuality because of the world.
That data is just it's scanty. There's not much there. Like if you're talking about those that are straight, we have a lot of data on that. But this whole idea now of this push from the pediatrics on trans stuff, it's so scanty, it's ridiculous.
Around them. They might not identify with a sexuality yet, but their parents do, and their friends' parents do. And in order to understand different family
because
structures
it's objective
and other people's experiences and develop empathy, they need to understand queerness.
Oh, so it's empathy. So if you're not understanding this in your household or your children, and your kid just one day says, I'm a female, when in actuality it's a biological male, you don't have empathy, because that kid, preschool age, before 5 years old, knows exactly who they are to a T. Hell, they'll even know what they want to be when they grow up. You know that? How many of you have go, I'm going to be an astronaut? And it turns out like maybe you're an accountant now, or maybe you're a police officer. I'm going to do this. I'm going to fly to Mars. I'm going to be the president of the United States. No, you're not. So there's a lot of wild things kids think of. And yes, we can entertain some of them. But when you're talking about sexuality and messing with the kid's mind, probably not a great idea. But this is what they want to push in your school system without you knowing, folks. It's wild. It's freaking wild.
Exposed to sexuality every day. Just look at literally any Disney movie where there is heterosexual kissing. It is
and that's
normal
why
to
we're
talk to kids
all
about
fleeing
straight relationships
from Disney
and
because of
straight
the stuff
couples
they're pushing.
and nuclear heterosexual families. So why should queerness and queer families and queer sexuality be any different? Kids as young as preschoolers need to understand gender and sexuality in order to develop empathy for others and to be able to understand themselves in relationship to the world around them and the people around them.
It's crazy.
Once you get past this age, it's a lot harder to undo and complicate the ideas of the kind of cis heteronormative world that these kids and we are in.
It just makes it harder to indoctrinate them the older they get, because now their frontal lobe is slowly developing, and it gives them the opportunity to be able to reason and critically think. And so when we reach that point, we've lost our opportunity to groom them now and transition them. If that doesn't horrify you folks, I don't know what does. It's crazy. A few of the comments here are, keep groomers away from my children. Yeah. Somebody wrote, absolutely sicko, absolute insanity. It really, I mean, it is something else. And I don't know why there is such a strong push from the LGBTQ community to do this to children. It is wild to me. If you want to be 18 years old and pursue that on your own, or you are a teenager and your parents somehow want you to pursue that or whatever it may be, sure. We're talking about the public school system. This is not something that, as far as I'm aware, is within state standards, or at least in Common Core standards. I'm not aware of trans identity indoctrination being pushed on kids. If it is, could somebody cite me the actual standard? Because I don't see the standard. And if you're curious, you can just go to Common Core website. You can go California Common Core standards and try to find it yourself. And find it. I mean, you could go all the way to kindergarten. I just don't see the standards of the stuff they're talking about. Furthermore, as a teacher, there are times, and I want to be clear on this, because I hound the LGBTQ community a lot. There are instances where students will ask you questions. Okay, students, you're with them like an hour and a half a day, sometimes 45 minutes, an hour and a half, depending if your block or regular schedule. They will ask you random questions. Sometimes the questions are inappropriate. Look, they're teenagers or younger. They're going to ask you inappropriate questions. It will 100% happen every school year. But you as the adult have to be able to not engage with that conversation that's inappropriate. You should let them know, hey, that question's inappropriate. I don't feel comfortable answering that. If you want to pursue that question, you can either ask your parent or guardian, or depending on the issue, if it's like depression or something like that, I'm more than happy to write you a slip to go see the counselor or something of that nature. You don't have to indulge every single question a student asks you. And a lot of questions that are kind of personalized aren't really or shouldn't really be answered. Again, I don't feel comfortable with that. Sometimes you can laugh it off and be like, oh, hey, it's a little awkward. That's not the discussion we're having right now, whatever it may be. But for some reason, they want to just, let's have a question answered to a freaking 4-year-old about gender identity. Oh, I'm queer trans. Do you know what that means? No, they don't know what that means. They don't even know what queer means. They barely know what straight means. There's no way in hell they're going to know what queer means or trans or gender identity. They barely know the alphabet. They barely know how to count. And you're going to try and have these deep philosophical, we'll put philosophical in air quotes for those listening, philosophical questions about gender with them. It's not so much philosophical, folks, really. I mean, it's been the same thing all of human existence. There's male and female, and that's it. Sure, there's certain abnormalities and outliers that take place within sex, okay? But you're talking fractions of a percent. But this whole thing that there's basically an unlimited amount of genders is just mind-boggling to me. So I'm not going to entertain this that much more. I just wanted to bring you updates that it's still going on, that we still need to be aware of it amidst of all the other crap that the progressive left and Democrats are doing. Now, a little bit of a fun segment here. There is a conspiracy theory that Joe Biden delivered virtual remarks to the Nobel Conference. Okay, this happened the other day. It looks like he's in the residence because I believe he had COVID at the time, or at least was exiting the COVID in terms of being tested negative. And a lot of Republicans and conservatives and independents, quite frankly, are coming out saying that this isn't Joe Biden, that this video clip here that we're going to go over is somebody else. And at first, when you see like the 360p, like the pixelated version, you're like, man, that does look like a deep fake. That does look like it's not Joe Biden. And I want to bring you guys the 1080p, the high definition version of Joe Biden. And let's see what you think. Do you think this is a deep fake, or do you think this is really the president of the United States? Because watch his eyes, watch his eyebrows. I don't even think he blinks for a while. Let's go ahead and roll it, and then we'll talk about it.
The defeated former president of the United States watched it all happen as he sat in the comfort of the private dining room next to the Oval Office. While he was doing that, brave law enforcement officers were subject to the medieval hell for 3 hours, dripping in blood, surrounded by carnage, face to face with crazed mob that believed the lies of the defeated president. The police were heroes that day. Donald Trump lacked the courage to act. The brave women and men in blue all across this nation should never forget that. You can't be pro-insurrection and pro-cop. You can't be pro-insurrection and pro-democracy. You can't be pro-insurrection and pro-American. There can be no greater responsibility
Still hasn't blinked.
than to do all we can to ensure the safety of our families, our children, our community, our nation, and our law enforcement officers. I will always meet that.
So we'll pause it there. I mean, he still hasn't taken a blink. A couple things here is you can't be pro-insurrection and pro-police. I'm not seeing many Republicans out there that are stoked about the whole thing of, and we'll come back to the video clip because I want to talk about his face. I don't see any Republicans that are super stoked about what took place. We all call them idiots. We don't even consider those that ran into the Capitol, like those actually ran inside the Capitol and did what they did. We don't even classify them as Republicans, and definitely not conservative because they're not using any conservative values that we hold or uphold. There were people outside that decided not to go in, but you're also talking about a handful of idiots. You're not talking about thousands of people storming inside the Capitol. This nonsense they're pushing is just, it's all theater. It really is. And this is just astonishing that this guy's going to talk about police officers while at the same time his own party defunded the police. Where were they the last 4+ years before he took office on supporting our police officers? I don't know, maybe in Portland, maybe in Washington, maybe in I don't know, Los Angeles, California, in Waukesha, or what was it, Minneapolis? I don't even know how you pronounce that other word, or the other locality. I think it was that young man who shot a couple people. I think it's Waukesha. Somebody will correct me in the comments. But, you know, they weren't anywhere to be found. They don't want to support our police officers in the same way that conservatives and Republicans do, but they're going to use them as political pawns in the same way that supposedly Republicans are using immigrants, busing them to different localities as political pawns. Now, what people are saying is a couple things. One, in the blurry version, again, this is the HD version, it does look a little sus. It looks like a deep fake. Now, if you look at the eyes here, he doesn't blink, which people think is odd as well. Normally he's squinting like a Clint Eastwood look because there's lights. So that's rare that he's not squinting. And then the big factor that a lot of people think this is CGI and fake is because he has blue eyes. So if you look at Joe Biden's photos, he has, you know, like ocean blue eyes, like usually very bright eyes. And here people are saying those are brown eyes. If you look in the less quality video, I think by the Associated Press, it does look like brown eyes. There's an issue here though. And this comes into more of film. When you look at his navy blue jacket, furthermore, look at the color in the flag on the back. So this has to do with the coloring, maybe the white balance. White balance can shift things dramatically. And usually with these cameras, I doubt they're using auto white balance. Usually they'll have like sometimes you just hold up a piece of paper. It depends. But his eyes are blue in this photo. I don't believe this is CGI. I don't think this is a deep fake. I think that he's potentially maybe hopped up on something, like in terms of giving him drug use. And that came from Tucker Carlson's show on Fox News, where they literally had a whistleblower say, hey, during the campaign, and even now, Jill Biden is observing him taking drugs to help him along on these speeches. Like, he would not make a public appearance without being on something. So there is a chance here that he is on something that's going to help him through the speech. He's still clearly struggling. There are edits that you've seen because he probably fumbled through his words, couldn't get through something. Maybe it was nap time. Who the hell knows? But because if you look at the color in the back and his blue and just the blues and everything that are in here, the color gradient's a little off, but those are definitely blue eyes. So I don't think it's CGI. I don't think it's a deep fake. I really do believe this is the president of the United States. It's just odd not seeing him blink or squint, acting a little weird. But again, when you're this age, the guy does a lot of weird things. Okay, folks. He smells little girls. All right. He holds them awkwardly. He says awkward things. He says weird things. He does a lot of just oddball stuff. So again, I think it's the president, but I want to let you guys have an opportunity to let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think it's a deep fake? Now that you see the HD, the 1080p version, let me know in the comments below. I hope all of you have a lovely weekend. Look, hit that like and subscribe. Jump on the bandwagon now, folks. You want to be one of those that said, hey, I was watching this guy when he did his show out of a freaking closet. I want you guys to be one of those. So join the bandwagon, hit that like and subscribe button, get while the going's good, because we are grassroots here at the Bald Brad Show, starting from the ground up. And I'm telling you, we ain't stopping. We're doing full steam ahead. We have announcements coming out sometime in the future doing some projects that I've been working on for a while. We do have other things in the pipeline that we want to get going as well. So again, make sure you hit that like and subscribe, support us here, and be on the lookout for Supernatural Saturdays. If you are new to the show and you're going, well, what the hell is Supernatural Saturday? I'm here for politics. One of the main reasons I wanted to do a podcast style and have other forms is because Saturdays just bring a great opportunity to deviate and take a step aside from the politics and the craziness of the world, the Joe Bidens, the jean-pierres, all that stuff, and just have a little bit of fun. I'm not saying you have to believe in aliens. I'm not saying you have to believe in the paranormal or all that stuff, but I like adventure, right? Those 80s style movies, the Goonies, Indiana Jones, like having fun with things, reacting to ghosts, seeing if something's real or not real. You know, I like that stuff. I'm really into it. And so that's always what I wanted to do with this channel, was have a moment, even if it's both days, Saturday and Sundays, it's not. But I wanted to have a day where we can go over and have fun with looking at alien video clips or looking at ghosts, the paranormal stuff like that. Maybe even at some point going on a paranormal investigation ourselves, or maybe trying to meet with somebody that knows a lot about aliens, or doing a podcast for that on a Saturday special. So with that, that's Supernatural Saturdays. Be on the lookout for that. And then on Sundays, we're not back to our regular program. Sundays, I just upload a couple videos and bring you a little bit of news, a little bit of a teaser to get back into the mix and get prepared for Monday's news segment, where we bring you, again, the Bald Brad Show every Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then we upload segments of the show every 2 hours. So however many segments we have, every 2 hours, we will come out with something new. If there's something in between, it might be a short, or, hey, there's something right now, breaking news that I want to cover. I'll kind of intertwine that in between or after all those segments are uploaded. So love your support. Love your comments. I love you as friends. And honestly, folks, you are true American patriots. Let's continue getting conservative thought and ideas out there to new viewers. With that being said, I will see you later here on The Bald Brad Show.